One sentence summary. Almost identical to the 1984 version, but I didn't hate it. Could you beat the villain? This film has many villainous characters, but Paul, the main character, the protagonist, never confronts the Baron or the Baron's nephew or anything along those lines, because it's only like the first half of the story, really. That being said, again, you can play into the galactic bureaucracy and people are going to start paying attention and be like, oh my god, these guys are evil, we shouldn't support them. So, problem solved. How would you improve this film? Whilst this does improve on the last film, in some places it was almost a line for line remake, which I thought was weird. And the first 20 minutes or so feel like a longer version of the trailer, so a lot of that felt redundant. Some of the stuff revealed later in the film that should be impressive, like the Baron floating and Paul's vision of the future, were also in the trailer. So again, trailer ruined it. That's sad. Gurney is probably killed in the invasion of Arrakis or whatever it is by the Baron's forces and whoever. And well, that, as far as Paul and Jessica know, and they're all like, "Oh man, I'm really sad that my dad's dead, and you know, we've been invaded and stuff." No one even mentions Gurney, poor guy. Jason Momoa, he looks odd without his beard. Has a beard, then he comes back later in the film after a while and he's shaved it off. And like, I don't think I've ever seen him without a beard before. So, also some of the Fremen have beards, so I don't know why he shaved his beard when he was hanging out with them. Anywho, why is Paul, heir to the throne, friends with Jason Momoa, Duncan Idaho? I'm sure it's explained in the book or whatever, but if you don't explain it in the film, I'm not going to get it. I mentioned it in the last one, but it's the year 10,000 or whatever, and I still don't understand why some people have space names and some people are called Duncan Idaho, which sounds like he's done a crime and he's on the run and he's just, my name is Duncan Idaho, or whatever. I still don't understand the mix of old technology and new technology. A spaceship delivers a scroll that is signed with melted wax and a kind of signet ring to say this is my signature, you know, like they used to do in the olden days. And I looked into it, and apparently in the lore of Dune, in the past there was a big old kind of Terminator style uprising, so that's why they don't have computers. But again, if you don't explain it in the film, people aren't going to know. Similarly, I still don't get why they use swords. Right, if they've explained that the shields, they kind of block laser fire or whatever, that's why no one uses a laser gun. That would make sense, because you can slowly stab a dude with a spear or a sword or whatever. But in this, Paul's dad is killed by a projectile weapon sort of thing, and so the shields are obviously kind of jacked if you shoot someone right anyway, so I don't know. Seems like the Atreides people didn't bring a lot of their own stuff when they moved planet. Not only are the kind of sets of their homeworld and Arrakis kind of pretty bare, the buildings, but it seems like the Harkonnens basically just left them crappy sabotage technology to use like mining equipment. So it was weird. Like you see Jason Momoa arrives on, you know, from wherever he's been in like a plane or a spaceship or something. And then the ones they fly on Arrakis are different to those. So, you know, bring stuff with you if you want to survive. From my understanding of the situation, these people are descended from humans and it's in the far future. Who brought bulls, like cows, into space just so you could have a bullfight? That seems like a very archaic thing. The floating lights that follow people around, I don't like those, right? You can see where you are, you can't see in the... That's why light bulbs in a room, you know, the other end of the room, you turn it on from where you are, those are good. The spaceships in this, especially like the one that was like a dragonfly, so wings were doing that, basically like a helicopter I'd imagine, they didn't make a lot of turbulence in the air. So one of them, kind of, I think it's Jessica or whatever, watches the Jesuit women fly away, or woman fly away, and you know, you'd think it'd be like boom, like a Cape Canaveral kind of thing, but it's not. It just kind of goes. Woo. Also in that scene, Paul and his mum are maybe 25 feet away, but he's all whispering like, oh man, I'm sad that you maybe are going to betray me or whatever. She's like, ah, I can hear you, and I'm sad about that. It's raining. You'd have to shout. When they get to the planet Arrakis, aka Dune, why do they land so far away from the main city that they have to take the equivalent of a shuttle bus to where they're going to live? Because, you know, they're from this nice, pleasant, Earth-like planet and they move to a Sahara desert-like planet. Like, look, the sun's well hot, all right? During the day, stay out of the sun. And then people don't do that and they're not immediately like, oh, God, it's so hot. It's so much hotter than I've ever experienced. Because I hate the sun, and I'm sure they would as well. If Arrakis is the most important place in the galaxy, because that's where all the spice comes from, why are there no satellites watching it? Someone mentions like, oh, the moon is blocking communications or whatever. But if it's the most important place in the galaxy, because that's where all the spice comes from, you'd find a way, surely. The little drone hunter-killer thing that someone tries to assassinate Paul with, he hides in a hologram. And I'm not sure if that's a good idea, because it didn't seem like a good idea to me, but whatever. So the Harkonnen fellas and their allies invade. I'm not saying the suits were terrible, I'm just saying they weren't as good as I would have liked them to be. Especially, Paul has a vision of the future. I could have done without all of Paul's visions that go on for like a minute or 2 minutes at a time. Just little snaps, that's all I want. Anyway, Paul has a vision of the future where a CGI him is fighting with whoever it is, and he's in a gold suit, I think it is, and his face visor goes up and he's got a dodgy CGI face. But like, if you'd said, yeah, that's an episode of Power Rangers you're watching now, I'll be like, yeah, I understand that, but whatever. The CGI city on Arrakis seemed bare and lifeless on the exterior, just as it did on the interior sets, oddly enough. But it was weird. They're like, oh, look, this is the spaceport, this is where they refine the spice or whatever it is. And then there's just nothing else. There's no birds, which, you know, desert planet, I suppose that makes sense. But there's no traffic, there's no people, there's no nothing. It was just strange. Why did they have to strip Oscar Isaac down for that scene where he'd been captured by the Baron and his goons? That was weird. Paul and his mum are captured. They're being taken out to the desert because the Harkonnens can't kill them. But if they leave them in the desert, you know, that's basically a death sentence. And Jessica's like, oh, that guard is deaf. What's that got to do with? Why do you have to include that deaf guy, right? Don't make fun of him, all right? He's trying just as hard as he can, I'm sure. Paul declares himself the Messiah after a few drug-induced hallucinations, and maybe that's something that other people should say about you. You don't introduce the idea that you are the Messiah. Paul says to avoid the getting wormed to death, basically, you have to walk in a special way, like the Fremen. And then at the end of the film, the Fremen do not walk in that way. Is it just me, or do they mention the word Dune and the official name for the spice, melange, very few times in this film? Rating out of 5 beers. This film, in my opinion, is a better version of the 1980s one, but it had a lot of the same issues. So issues in my opinion. When Paul and Jessica are in the desert, it just becomes him explaining things to her, which was boring. And the Fremen suits, again, it's like, oh man, Paul's so special because he's wearing the Fremen suit, right? But and apart from, you know, just moving a couple of straps pointlessly, the doctor lady, we didn't see what the other people had done wrong with their Fremen suit. Stupid. Anyway, I would give this 4 beers out of 5.